Wit, and I am the Sparta Community Branch Manager. Today we are going to be making sisal, bottle brush trees, a kind of traditional old-timey holiday winter decoration they're all the rage again, but they're really easy to make yourself at home in whatever color combination you want. So let me show you the stuff that you're gonna need. The first thing you're gonna need is some sisal rope. This usually comes in long bits, but you only need like cut into 3 to 4 inch lengths. So if you get a big long, like 100 feet, you just cut it into 3 to 4, and you probably need for one tree, 2 to 3 3-inch lengths. You are also going to need something to cut that rope with. I use like pruning shears, but also a normal pair of scissors will absolutely work. You're going to need some floral wire. It can either be in a wheel or these just in a length, or in just in these individual pieces like this. And this is 20 gauge floral wire. You're going to need at least 2 old-fashioned clothespins, not the kind that hinge, but the kind that are that slip over. That you make like clothespin dolls out of. You'll need some sort of base. I'm using these wood rounds, but you could also use a half circle or anything that you wanted. A square a cube would work as well, but you just do want to drill a small hole in the center of them. A fork, like a steel comb would also work, but forks are pretty easy to come by. Scissors, I said, a pair of pliers. They don't have to be this big at all. It is nice if they have the wire cutters on them though. Some cups that you may or may not want to ever use again, so something disposable. If you don't want your hands to get all messy, you can have some gloves, something to stir with. So I'm just using a tongue depressor, some water, either on the tap or in a pitcher. Some paper towels or a regular towel that you don't mind getting stained. And then to color our trees, we're going to be using packets of like Kool-Aid drink mix, not Kool-Aid brand, but you know, drink mix. And you can try whatever color you like. There are some that work better than others. I find red to work the best, you can use whatever you like. You can also use any kind of dye. You could definitely use like commercial fabric dye would work on this. It's a little bit more messy and you do have to use hot water instead of just tap water. And then also you could use food coloring or a mix of the two. So you can use, this is liquid food coloring, but you could use gel food coloring as well. Just as long as you mix it in really well into the water. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing you're gonna do is take your lengths of sisal rope and you're gonna break it down basically, and you wanna just twist it the opposite way that it is twisted around. This one breaks down into 3 bundles of 3. So you're gonna twist it until the bundles come apart. And so at this stage, they will loosen up into the individual fibers. So you do want to, it is a natural fiber, it's a plant. So there might be little weird bits and bobs like pieces of leaf or mud or anything like that. They also tends to tangle a little bit. You can pull out the tangles as you go through, and you just want to separate them until they're the individual strands. And see, here's a big leaf in here that we can pull out. You just stack those up. And like I said, for one tree, you're going to use 2 to 3 3-inch lengths of sisal and get them all divided up. So some of them are going to have a little bit more detritus than others, and you'll just have to go through. It doesn't take a lot of time, but you do want to do a pretty good job and break them up so they're not clumped together as much as possible. And that's also, you'll find if there's any, it's a good way to make sure you don't have any extra junk in there that you're not going to want in your tree. So twisting them and pulling them is the best way to get them apart. And sometimes there'll be a tangle wrapped around them and you kind of can pull it loose with your fingers. Like I said, it does come usually sisal in pretty long lengths, so don't worry about having to pull out a bunch, or you know, a whole bundle isn't very good. You can pull out the bits that you don't want because you will probably have lots left over. So, but get it that as good as you can, get it, like I said, cleaned out of leaves and stuff as much as you can, and just have them all separated out. Get all the tangly bits out. All right, so you are gonna make a big mess. I do recommend covering the surface you're working on and not wearing your very best clothing while you're working on this, or an apron to cover your clothing. So you're gonna get a big bunch of sisal together. This is gonna be enough for probably 3 trees, this much, but we will start with making one. And here, the next thing you're gonna need is your bit of wire. Like I said, this is an already cut length, but if you get it on a spool, you can of course use that, but the longer your wire, the bigger and taller your tree can be. We're gonna get this wire in half, match up the ends here, and kind of just get it roughly in half. It doesn't have to be perfectly smashed together, perfect flat. In fact, you do want it to stay open a little bit. This is where you're gonna use your pliers. You can use your fingers to do this too, but the pliers do a quick job of it. Go down a little bit, like maybe a centimeter, and just turn it back so you create a little hook on the end of both ends of that wire. And so it's shaped into a U with a hook on each end. So this is where we're gonna decide how thick and fluffy our tree is gonna be, and also kind of how tall it's going to be. So you're gonna take our sisal and lay it out into kind of a loose mat. We don't want it to be super thick in any spot, kind of just spread it out. And I think I'm gonna use a little bit more. You can add to it. Yeah. You don't want it to be longer than your wire, of course, and you do want to leave a little bit at each end to work with. So it does limit somewhat. Your wire does determine how long it is, but also how much sisal you use will also determine that. You can add just a bit more. All right, keep finding. This is also, you can, if you miss some in the first stage, you can pick out the weird bits that are in there. All right. So, I've got my hooks around each other, come on. We're gonna then lay this inside of the wire. We're gonna open that U up a little bit and lay it on the inside and kind of in the middle as much as you can. None of this has to be exactly perfect. We have lots of places where you can make changes and adjustments, so it's not a big deal if it's exactly even. All right, so I put it approximately in the middle of the sisal. The sisal's going this way and the wire's going this direction. And then I'm gonna kind of smash it between these two. But again, leave a loop here and the hook's down here. Now we're gonna get our clothespins. I put the clothespin so that the hook goes over the top, so I can hold that with my thumb on the top, and then the other clothespin goes right in here. This can be a bit frustrating because the clothespin on the end definitely wants to come out, but you just kind of have to will it. You're gonna put a little bit of tension outwards, but you don't have to be pulling on it, tightly, but just like so the clothespin will stay on the wire, and you're gonna twist. Hold one end steady and twist the other. Like I said, this clothespin is gonna fight you a little bit, but it will get to work in here in just a second. So you're gonna twist until you have a pretty good twist and you're not seeing a bunch of untwisted wire where the sisal is. You want it to twist pretty tightly at the top and bottom as well, but you wanna make sure that it is twisting that sisal in there, and it's gonna look like a mess for sure. So just be patient. It'll work itself out, I promise. But you're gonna twist, 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 and you think, oh, have I twisted enough? No, twist a little more. So you really want that twist to be tight because that's what's holding that sisal in there. All right, I think maybe I'm not seeing large patches of green wire in the center anymore. It looks like it's pretty well twisted. So I'm gonna get it out. And that is real ugly and maybe will make you feel a little bit about what you're doing, bad about what you're doing here, but I promise we'll make headway. So this is where your fork comes in, and we're gonna give this guy a little brush. So just gently, you're gonna kind of tease tease out the sisal. It's not looking any prettier, but I promise we're gonna get there. So when you twist the wire, it tends to twist the sisal around the center, and so you're kind of pulling that out from the twist in this, not out, but you're pulling where it's the sisal has wound around the center. Don't pull it out from the wire. You want it to stay in there as much as possible. So it's kind of a balance between teasing out the sisal and not pulling it so hard that it comes out of the wire. All right, so again, still not super pretty, but we're working with it. Like I said, you can see it gets a little twisted there, and you can just kind of pick at it and pull at it and fluff it out, basically. All right, so now this is when once you've got it satisfactory to where you think you've teased as much as you can, this is where you have to be like Michelangelo and envision the tree in this mess. So you're gonna carve away and leave the tree. So what I do, I've decided this is the top of my tree. So I want my tree to be at an angle. The scissors right here, so I just cut at an angle, turn, keeping the same angle, cut, turn, same angle, cut and turn. So we'll just do that around the whole thing until you kind of really roughly cut the shape of a tree. And I really want to emphasize rough because this is not the last time we're going to trim this guy. We want to leave a lot on there to work with when we trim it again in a little bit. So don't worry about being exactly the tree you envisioned at the beginning of this because this is our first go round. And there's going to be obviously parts that are sticking off kind of wildly and you can trim those off. I like to look at it from the top down, and then I can see where it's not round on the bottom and trim around the bottom. So that gives it a shape there on the bottom, and then I might just do kind of a trim around here to any scragglers who might be sticking strangely towards the bottom. There's always some twist around the base of the tree that I can kind of undo and pull out or trim off. So here we go. We have a pretty rough cut. Give it another spin. What's this guy doing up here? We don't need him. Get rid of that guy. Cut him off. So like I said, very roughly cut to the shape of a tree. And it's time to fluff again. So you're gonna do a series of fluffing and cutting, fluffing and cutting. Again, leaving it pretty shaggy still. We don't wanna cut it down to where it's the final shape, but we're gonna fluff and cut. So I have one here that I've already worked on earlier where I've fluffed and shaped it to, again, the roughest shape that I want. So the next step is gonna be, we're gonna dye it now. So we're gonna cut this wire up the top right where the loop is from where we had our clothespin in. I'm gonna use just the wire cutters that are on my pliers. There's the word I was looking for. Also, it's handy to keep a trash can around while you're doing this. And then I'm gonna take my pliers and just kind of roll the end of that wire down so I don't poke and squeeze it so I don't poke myself on it later. All right, so now we have to decide what color we're gonna dye this guy. I am gonna do him red with red fruit drink. And so to do that, we're gonna just fill this cup with water. Doesn't need to be quite as deep as the tree because it'll take up some room. Then we'll take one of our fruit packs. These are nice because they're the individual size that we would fill up like a bottle of water with. So it's kind of the perfect size for this project. Oops. This is strawberry, so also these will smell pretty good when they're done. All right, we'll mix that in there. Get all the chunky bits to dissolve. Oh, maybe. Work with me here. All right, close enough. And then we just dunk them in there. And I use my tongue depressor to push down all the bits. And I think I'm gonna give them just a little bit more water because there's some sticking up out of the top. There we go. I'm gonna twist them in there to get them, make sure everything's under the water. All right, so this I'm gonna leave sit for, it could be, if that's as dark as you want it, you could take it out now. But if you want it, the longer you leave it in, the darker it will get. We'll reach a point where it's not gonna get any darker. Usually what I do is just make a second one while I'm working on this one, while I let this one soak. And so, but I'd say 10 to 15 minutes is probably a bare minimum, but you could leave them in as long as you like. So I already have some that have been in a dye bath for a while. This is gonna be a food coloring dye bath. So this is a little green, a lot of green, and a little bit of brown food coloring. This is where the paper towels are gonna come in. And again, where you might wanna make sure you're not wearing your Sunday best here. So we're gonna take him out and just dry him off. And just pat him dry, try not to smush him down too much. And what you might have noticed is that when you take the sisal out of the rope, it's really crimpy because it's had been twisted for so long. When you put it in the dye bath and you put it in the water, it really straightens out the fibers. So you now have a much more bottle brushy looking tree than you had when it was just the natural fibers. So if you like the natural color of the sisal, you could definitely leave them natural, but if you just soaked them for a while, all the waviness would come out from them. I also have one, that guy there, in pink. I haven't tried this color before, so let's see how it goes. It hasn't been in for too long, but, ooh, wowie, that one's really bright. Okay. This one's also food coloring. I like that one a lot. All right, so set these guys to the side so I don't knock them over. So again, you're just going to, wow, that's very bright. You're just going to dry them off on the towel, and you can like shake them a little bit. This doesn't need to be set with vinegar or anything. You could, but since we're not gonna eat these or handle these too much, they kind of just can be dyed and then let to dry. So, man, I really like this pink. It turned out really well. That's a crazy color. And some of this is just experimenting to find out what colors work best. I've also used the grape drink as well, and that turns out into like a silvery gray, which is kind of an interesting color as well. So now you have your tree. We have our green guy over here too. Oh, those make a good pair. So we're gonna do, again, fluff and cut, fluff and cut. So now that all the fibers have straightened out, mostly, you're gonna see where there is stuff that you missed when you were cutting it. So here's where we're gonna give it its final trim to get it really into shape. You also will see that there's sometimes some little gross blobs that got stuck in there, just like pieces of leaf and stuff. If they don't bother you, leave them be, but if you don't like them, cut them out. This is your tree. So you can wait for these to dry a little bit longer if you like, but you can also just go for it and start cutting. And so this is where you're gonna think about what you want your tree to be shaped like. In the end, do you want it to be a pretty narrow tree? Do you want it to have a wide base? And then once it dries, you're gonna fluff it up even more and give it another trim until you finally have your tree that you want. After these are all dry, you can definitely go with these, through these with maybe some white paint and add a little bit of snow to the ends of the branches, or glitter to the end of the branches. Put little baubles in there if you want. You can decorate these to your heart's content, or just leave them plain. I think they look great just plain. So again, you're gonna cut and fluff. And the fluffing kind of just brings out all the ones that you are a little bit longer. Yeah, always miss some. This could be a process that takes a long time if you want to, but also I think they kind of look okay if they're a little bit harried as well. They don't have to be perfect. And if you come back a couple days later and you realize there's a big thing sticking out from one of them, you can cut it off then, no big deal. All right, so you would do the same thing with this one. So here's the difference, you know, this is cut down a little bit more and this one is right out of the dye bath. So basically you're just gonna refine the shape until you get the shape that you want. So I have one that is all dry already, and this will be our final stage. This is that with the grape, with the grape coloring that turns into kind of a nice silvery color. Well, it's mostly dry, it's a little bit wet still. But, so the last thing we're gonna do is we're going to take our wire cutter and cut off that hook we put in the bottom of the tree. You can also, you know, if you want it to decide if you want it to have a long trunk or a short trunk, that's up to you. I'm gonna cut off some of these guys that were twisted in there. All right, and then we grab one of our rounds that has a hole in the middle. I just drilled this with a Dremel, but you could use a small drill bit as well. And then put a little bit of glue, which I didn't mention as a supply, but you can also not use the glue. You can definitely just stick these in here and they will stand up without the glue. But you can also use hot glue if that's more your speed. And if your glue doesn't want to work for you. Boop. There it goes. All right. And so our final bit to do is to just put, come on. Oh, I'm supposed to say this is easy, but it's not working for me. Come on. There we go. Sometimes you need to twist it a little bit. And you can even it up, and there's a little purpley silver tree. I'm just going to show you a couple other ones. This one's green. It was colored with watered down acrylic paint. I didn't like the way it worked especially well, but I think it would give you lots of options because there's lots of colors of acrylic paint. This was food dye. This was the Kool-Aid, not Kool-Aid, the fruit drink, strawberry drink. And this was another one that was grape drink. So that, and there you go, your sisal trees.